seconds here. We ask you kindly to give the show a like and a share on any of those social media platforms you're watching upon, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram or Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, you name it. We can take your perspective, your questions, as long as they are respectful. We certainly, as you know on the program, do not mind being challenged or disagreed with, but it's got to be in a respectful fashion. Today's guest is a man we admire quite a bit, who is halfway through his term as the Albemarle Commonwealth's attorney. And his term so far, in my book, has been absolutely stellar, with a focused goal of criminal justice reform. And we will welcome Jim Hindley to the program in about 25 seconds today to highlight some of the milestones that have been accomplished so far and what is planned for the final 2 years of his term on East High Street, serving the fine voters and citizens of Albemarle County. So a lot of questions have already come in. As you guys know, the last week of programming has been pretty hot. And it's been pretty hot because we have a topic in masking in schools that really hits the heartstrings of mama bears and papa bears out there when it comes to their children. And of course we have a new governor in Glenn Youngkin, who right out of the gates has put some policy in play that has got a lot of folks on one side of the fence or the other. Such is the nature of social media in 2022. Scott Aaronworth, the Esquire of Virginia Beach, fan of the program, is watching the show. Scott, thank you kindly for watching. We appreciate your support. We'll welcome folks in Richmond, Virginia on the show. Short Pump, Albemarle County, Crozet, Marquise Johnson in Hampton, Virginia. Hello, Mr. Johnson. Welcome to the program. Some folks in McLean, Arlington, and Georgetown on the feed. Same with Lynchburg and Martinsville. City of Charlottesville, I see here on our heat map. Thank you kindly for joining us on the show. Folks and friends in Wyoming, welcome gang to the program. And thank you kindly for joining us. If you could give the show a like and a share, please do so now. Questions and comments on Twitter, Neil Williamson. We're happy to relay those on air, President of the Free Enterprise Forum. We'll have a good time today. Judah Wickhauer, we are in your hands, my friend. He's our fantastic director.
Right on the set.
Good Wednesday afternoon, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love Seaville show. Thank you kindly for joining us. We are live in downtown Charlottesville, Virginia, from our Macklin Building studios with a Commonwealth-wide, countrywide, and global audience. So much to cover on the program as we continue the discussion of masks in schools, in the Commonwealth, and policy put in play from the top of the first inning from Governor Glenn Youngkin. Tomorrow's show, the two doctors, 2 of the 14 behind the Urgency of Normal Toolkit on the program, Dr. Eliza Holland and Dr. Jeff Vergalis. We're excited to welcome them on the program, 12:30 tomorrow. But today we have a star and a man that's made tremendous impact in our community over decades, and certainly in his first 2 years as the Commonwealth's Attorney of Albemarle County. Friend of the program, Jim Hindley. Judah Wickhauer is our director. If you can go to the 2-shot and welcome Mr. Hindley to the program. Good afternoon, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and thanks for inviting me to have a conversation today.
Absolutely. We very much enjoy you here on the show, and I love the perspective you offer, the nuanced perspective. And I love how we can either agree or disagree in gentleman and respectful fashion. What makes this country great is conversations where we can hear both sides of the proverbial coin. So I'll get out of your way. Introduce yourself to everyone that's watching the program.
Well, I'm Jim Hindley, and I'm the current Commonwealth's Attorney for Albemarle County. As Jerry was saying at the beginning of the show, I'm about halfway through my term. I took office in January of 2020, and now we're in January of 2022, so it's a 4-year term, 2 years into it. I'm excited by the work that our office is doing, and I'm also mindful of the fact that our work has been very seriously affected by COVID. If you look at the timeline, COVID really got going with a full head of steam back in March of 2020, which was just about 2 months after I took office. So in addition to everything else that we're doing, we're trying to manage our operations in the time of COVID, and also to have an impact on the community, which is affected more broadly by COVID.
How has the first 2 years of the term gone from your standpoint?
Well, in terms of the work that we've done, I came into office elected on a platform of criminal justice reform, and we've really been pursuing a criminal justice reform agenda from day one, and we've accomplished a lot. In our office, we've put the focus on smart prosecution rather than what some people see the prosecution function as being as purely punishment. And by smart prosecution, what I mean is we look for ways to hold people accountable. Anybody who commits crime has to be accountable, but at the same time, give them something coming out of the process that's going to make them more likely in the future to be good citizens. And if we can help people get back on track, obviously that's a benefit to the community because it means that there'll be less crime in the future. So what are some of the things we're doing? We're doing a lot of diversion rather than people going through the system and ending up in jail. We have diversion. We can keep them in the community. They can get treatment. They can get services. And they're under tight supervision. They're closely monitored. Make sure that they do get on the right track. But diversion is a big opportunity for people. It's a big opportunity for the community to change lives. So we're doing that. We do Restorative Justice, which is a program where people who are harmed by criminal conduct get to participate in a meaningful way in deciding how the case is going to be resolved in the end. It's kind of a complicated process, but I'll just mention restorative justice is one of the things that we're doing. We're also looking at jail as a tool. Jail is a tool that is necessary sometimes. Certainly it's necessary when you have violent people that need to be separated from the community. But there are a lot of times when jail is the wrong tool to use. And as a result of our efforts and the efforts of the Charlottesville Commonwealth's Attorney Joe Platania, we have brought the population of the local jail down to the lowest level that it's been in more than 25 years. And we've been able to accomplish that by looking carefully at who should be in jail and who doesn't need to be in jail. And so that's really been, that's been an enormous effort, and I think it's paid off for this community in a lot of ways. It's paid off because the people who aren't in jail now are getting the services and things they need in the community. It's paid off because it costs less if you have fewer people in jail.
Taxpayers.
Taxpayers. And if I can circle back to the beginning, in the time of COVID, reducing the number of people who are in that congregate setting, that very dangerous setting for the spread of COVID, if we can reduce the number of people who are in the jail, we make the jail safer. And when you talk about making the jail safer, this is something I want to emphasize. People think, well, it's safer for the people who are in the jail, the prisoners. Well, yes, it is safer for the prisoners. But you know who else it's safer for is all of us, because people work in the jail. We have correctional officers, we have staff, various kinds of staff, food service workers. All those people come in the jail during the day and leave at the end of the day and come back into our community. So by doing what we've been doing in the jail, we're making it safer for the prisoners who were there, but we're also making it safer for the community, because the people who are working at the jail and coming back and forth into the community every day have less risk of getting disease.
Very well said, and thank you for that. The man has been a man of his word. This is what he campaigned on, and he's following through on promises made during an election. Parents watching the program, and questions are coming in, as you can imagine, what they pertain to. It's this pandemic, it's masking, it's the governor, it's the lifting of the mandate of mask wearing in schools. So I'll start open-ended question immediately. I don't even think we should call it the top of the first inning. I mean, as he's trotting out of the dugout to the batter's box, Governor Glenn Youngkin lifts the mask mandate and passes the autonomy of children masking to parents, as opposed to a governmental edict, a school edict. Your thoughts on that, and then we'll take a deeper dive.
All right, well, first let me set the stage. This is happening right now, and what's also happening right now as far as COVID goes is we're in the worst place that we've been. And I don't want people to forget that. People talk about, well, Omicron, it maybe is affecting people less seriously, it's a milder form of the disease. That may be true, but that's not true for everybody. There are plenty of people who are seriously ill because of Omicron. But let's set the stage. Where are we in terms of the COVID pandemic? And I'll give you a statistic, and I like facts. Let's have a conversation and have facts. And these facts are from the Blue Ridge Health District. In our district, Charlottesville and Albemarle County, as of January 24th, as of this Monday, the last week's reporting statistics, our new local cases for the week are up 25.1%. And that's a total of 1,853 new cases in Charlottesville and Albemarle County. And again, to put that in perspective, that is the most new cases that have ever been reported.
Right.
In other words, if you look at the graph and want to talk about peak, we're at the peak. I don't know if the peak's going to go higher next week or going to come down a little bit. But right now, as we sit here, right now, as Governor Youngkin's order goes into effect, we in this community, at least Charlottesville and Albemarle, are in the worst place that we've ever been. And then just, again, with respect to the seriousness of it, right now there are 126 patients at UVA Hospital, COVID patients. And back in July, the average count of COVID patients was 15 to 20. Once again, we're in the worst place in terms of the number of patients in the hospital, the number of beds that are taken up by COVID patients, than we've ever been. And this is affecting, in my office, I have somebody who's scheduled for surgery, canceled. This is happening all across our community, all across Virginia. Hospitals are filling up with COVID patients, and people can't get surgery. Okay, so that's where we are.
Set the stage.
Yes, set the stage. Now, the next thing to set the stage is mask mandates. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of controversy about whether masking is effective, whether it has harmful side effects, all of those things. But I'm just going to tell you how I see it, and we all have to respect each other's point of view on this, but I want you to know what my point of view is. And I'm going to quote you from an article from Forbes magazine. It was just published in the last week. And and it talks about the effectiveness of masking. And it's also it's an article about Governor Youngkin's ending of the mask mandates in schools. And it says, quote, "But altogether the studies show that it is fair to say that evidence to date favors the proposition that mandatory mask wearing for school children helps slow the spread of COVID." So as a starting point, masking is effective. And then the CDC, of course, also has that same conclusion. And the way they describe it, and I'll read it from the CDC, "The prevention benefit of masking is derived from the combination of source control and wearer protection. The relationship between source control and wearer protection is likely complementary and possibly synergistic, so that the individual benefit increases with increasing community mask use. And mask use has been found to be safe." So what that says, to boil it down, is there's two ways that masking helps control the spread of disease, reduce the spread of disease. One is source control. If you have COVID and wear a mask, you're less likely to spread it. If you don't have COVID, but you're in proximity to somebody who does and you wear a mask, the mask filters out particles. Now, is it perfect? Is it foolproof? No. But the fact is that masking, source control, and wearer protection add up to reducing the spread of disease. So, set the table. Now we have Governor Youngkin, in the face of our community being the worst place it's ever been with COVID, and in the face of facts that say mask wearing is effective in preventing the spread of disease, he abdicates responsibility for deciding if mask wearing, mask mandates, are an effective policy that should be put in place in our schools and other places in our community. He abdicates that responsibility to parents. Now, can you imagine the governor is saying parents get to decide about a policy of public health? And that's where we are.
Well, you set the stage very well. I'll respond to that. Governor Youngkin, in his campaign, was very straightforward throughout the campaign process of what he was going to do. He campaigned on a foundation, and political strategists, scientists would agree with this. He campaigned on a foundation of empowering the parents from a curriculum and child rearing standpoint, putting the autonomy back in the hands of parents. He then utilized a couple of political strategical errors by McAuliffe when McAuliffe said the parents shouldn't have influence on the curriculum, educational curriculum. He pounced on that, and that became very much part of Youngkin's narrative. And we saw, as otherwise pockets of blue in the Commonwealth quickly pivoted to purple and some cases red. Then Youngkin wins the election. And he, from day one, perhaps I am slightly surprised it happened this soon, in particular because of the statistics you outlined. But immediately out of the gates, he's following through on the promises from his campaign, like you have very much followed through on the promises of criminal justice reform with your campaign. He's trying to be a man of his word with what he promised Virginians. I don't think Youngkin is necessarily anti-mask, and I have no doubt that we're going to go down the road of Georgetown Prep and his kids at private schools, and the private schools where his children are pro-mask. I know that's going to come up on the show.
Yep.
But Youngkin said clearly, this is what I'm going to do. Virginians voted him into office, and then he did it. I don't see him as anti-mask. I see him instead as parental autonomy empowered the parents over how their kids will be raised.
Well, I agree that he said he would do it, and he did it. But that doesn't answer the question of whether it's right or wrong to do it.
You're talking timing,
No, I'm
or
talking
in general.
absolutely in general. It's wrong to do it. And I'll tell you why. Masking is a controversial subject, right?
Very controversial.
We all know that. And I think you've used the term, I don't want suits telling me what to do as a parent. However, there is a place for suits to tell people what to do, and this is one of those places. Let me give you an example. Masking being as controversial as it is. And, you know, we've seen it even generate violence sometimes. Okay? Suppose that you, as a parent, would like the autonomy to go to a school which has a masking requirement, but you, as a parent, don't want your child to wear a mask because you feel that you're exercising parental autonomy. And you feel that in support of that, you should take a gun to school, just in case there's violence, in case there's a problem. You should take a gun to school. Now, you feel that's to protect your child. That's an exercise of parental autonomy. Do you think you should be allowed to take a gun to school?
No, sir. No, sir, I do not. And I think in that particular circumstance, that is a bit of an extreme. I think the remedy the parent has if a mask mandate is in play is to decide whether or not to remove the child from that school to a school system that allows parental autonomy and or homeschool their child where the parent truly has full autonomy. I think bringing weapons to school areas where they're clearly by law not allowed is irrational. And to your point, there was recently a mother at a school board meeting who
Yes.
threatened the entire school board by saying, if you don't change this mandate, lack of better phrase, I'm going to mow you guys all down.
Yeah.
She threatened them, and she was arrested, as she should have been, because you can't make threats to people against their lives. So I understand the point you're making about parental autonomy, but I think masking and carrying guns to school are two very different things.
They're different things, but my point is this. You're willing for a suit to tell you not to bring a gun to school. You're not willing for a suit to tell you to wear a mask or not wear a mask, or for your child to wear a mask or not wear a mask. And so this is the point I'm making, and it is an extreme point, I suppose, using the gun, but it's not an unreasonable point given the violence that we've seen in the community around this issue, and given that particular example that you gave that happened right here in Virginia, in Page County.
Right.
Okay? So what I want you to think about, what I hope the listeners will think about, is who gets to make the call. That is the issue. Now, there are pros and cons of masks. And there are people that believe we should have mask mandates, people that believe we shouldn't have mask mandates. But you know, fortunately for us, we have a system that's going to provide a method for us to make that decision. And the system that we have is not to say, well, parents get to make the call. I'm pro-mask. And if I had a child in school, and my children are all grown now, so I don't, but if I had a child in school, I don't think it's fair that a parent gets to make the call on whether school is safe or not in terms of the mask requirement. And I'll tell you who does get to make the call, and that's what Governor Youngkin says. Governor Youngkin says, I'm giving the parents the right to make a decision for everybody. Once one parent makes a decision that their child is not wearing a mask, then if I want my child to be safe in that school, that child is no longer safe because we do not have universal mask requirements. And as I indicated at the beginning, the facts are that universal masking makes my child safer in school, okay? So who gets to make the call? Governor Youngkin says each parent gets to veto the parents who believe that masks should be required. But that's against our system. In our system, parents don't get to make that call. School boards get to make that call. And in the Constitution, let's go back to facts, in Virginia's Constitution, the supervision of schools in each school division shall be vested in a school board to be composed of members selected in the manner for the term possessing the qualifications as provided by law. So in our Constitution, it says school boards make these decisions, not Governor Youngkin, not parents. And that's what's wrong with what Governor Youngkin did. He disregards the Constitution. Now, I'm going to hear this back. Well, you know, you're just like Terry McAuliffe. Parents don't get a say. I'm not like Terry McAuliffe. I believe parents have every right to have opinions and to express those opinions and to express public policy. And where does that right take place? At school board meetings. How many school board meetings have there been where the mask mandate has been discussed, up for consideration, up for vote?
Plethora.
Plethora.
More than we can count.
And how many times have parents who believe their children should not wear masks have an opportunity to express their views in the public forum?
Plenty of times.
Countless,
Yeah,
okay?
right.
That's where this belongs. And parents have not been shut out. Parents have been given every opportunity to say, I don't want my kid to wear a mask and here's the reason why, or I want every kid to wear a mask and here's the reason why.
And I will add even more ammunition to Jim's argument. The school board members are elected. So if you want to say in this, you go to the voters box and you vote for the people that are representative of your ideology and you get them in office. For example, in Greene County, by a 3-2 vote, Greene County School Board voted pro-choice when it comes to masks and parents. One of the 2 members of the school board that voted no quit yesterday from the Greene County School Board because of frustration of lifting the mask mandate. Now, I will respond to that in respectful fashion. Virginians, by an over 2% margin, 2.2% to be exact, voted Youngkin into office. He won an election. So the popular vote in our Commonwealth said Youngkin should be the governor, the policymaker, and he campaigned on a foundation of pro-choice. It's fine, pro-choice now is mask. Remember pro-choice before COVID was abortion.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, now pro-choice is masking.
Yeah.
Okay, he ran on a pro-choice campaign. Youngkin did.
Yep.
And he's following through on what he promised. And now there's anarchy, for lack of a better phrase, and that may be hyperbolized slightly, but there's division. It's divisive, undoubtedly. Seven school systems in the Commonwealth are suing the governor. 7 of them. And I rattled them off last couple shows ago. I'll rattle them off again, then I'll get out of your way. Fairfax County, Prince William County, Alexandria, Arlington, Richmond, Falls Church, and Hampton. I'm interacting with another attorney that watches the program that's saying he's being asked by parents to potentially sue the governor. We know that there's a contingent of parents that are galvanizing, that are potentially doing that locally in Central Virginia. So I'll get out of your way. You're the expert. I'm just trying to keep pace of the show here.
No, I appreciate what you said, and I think you've added a lot to the conversation. Governor Youngkin won by 2%.
2.2.
Whatever. He won. And as a result of that, he gets to make policies that are in his lane. He doesn't get to make all policies, let's be clear. This is not a policy that's in his lane. This is a policy that belongs to the school board.
Why would it not be in his lane if the Commonwealth funds schools, public schools? And he's atop of governing the Commonwealth. This seems to me it's very much in his purview.
It's not. And I'll just tell you that, and you gave a perfect example. And as I read the provision from the Virginia Constitution, these decisions are made by school boards. Now, can the governor influence policy because of the tools the governor has? Yes, maybe. But he doesn't have the right to make policy that is a school board, is committed to school boards. He might, for example, go to the legislature and he might say, I want you to take funding out of the budget for school systems that disagree with me.
Does he have the autonomy to do that?
I don't know. I'm not expressing a legal opinion on that. I'm just responding to your point about, well, doesn't he
Funding
have some
schools.
influence?
Right.
He might have influence by the use of financial means. He might have influence in some other way.
Because his lieutenant governor told Fox News, and then I'll get out of your way, his lieutenant governor very on the record expressed to Fox News 2 Sundays ago that if schools do not respond accordingly to the policy we're implementing, we may, in lack of a better phrase, leverage funding against them.
Sure. I mean, I understand that threat's been made. I don't know if it's possible. I'm just saying that that's something that the governor may be looking at, and according to what we hear from the lieutenant governor, perhaps he is. I don't know. But here's the fundamental point, though. He's canceled a democratic institution. He's canceled school boards, which are set up in Virginia in the Constitution. We hear a lot of talk about cancel culture. He's come into office. I've got a mandate. I won this office. I ran on these promises. I have a mandate to do these things. One of the mandates I have is get rid of masks. Okay? Does that mean that he can cancel out other democratic processes that are required in our community to accomplish his mandate? Does that mean that if he's keeping a campaign promise, that it cancels out the other forms of government that we have?
How about this point from Vanessa Parkhill, who's watching in Earlysville? She contributes to the program routinely. To Mr. Hindley's point, if it is not in Governor Youngkin's lane, how was the original mandate in Governor Northam's lane?
The mandates have been in the school board's lane.
Because I believe Northam did utilize the governor's influence to mask mandate all public schools in the Commonwealth.
Well, and he also mask mandated other places. That was a separate thing. That was using his power as and he does have statutory power in a public health emergency to impose measures that protect the public against disease. He has that power. That's a different thing, though. That's the affirmative power that he has in a public health emergency, and it's particularly circumscribed to do certain things. Governor Youngkin is not exercising that power.
Unless Youngkin utilizes the public health emergency associated with higher increase in adolescent suicides and a higher increase in mental health, depression, and other issues associated with mingling amongst peers and removing the advantages of socialization in schools.
Okay, if he's going to do that, then let him do it. He didn't do that. Let him put that on the record, and then we'll have a debate, and we'll see if that's within his authority.
Because he could then utilize the same stratosphere of health emergency that Northam did with mask in 2022 with health emergency associated with adolescents, suicide, depression, mental health.
Yeah, he could, but he'd have to back it up. And so let him do it. If that's what he wants to do, that's a hypothetical. And I'm not saying that that's impossible to do, but that's not what he chose to do. And again, that issue, let's go back to what happened when school boards imposed mask mandates. That issue was presented to school boards. Somebody has to make the call about balancing the protections that come from masks with the harm that may be done in some cases to people who wear masks. And I'm not into debating that.
Sure.
But I acknowledge that there are two sides to that coin. But those debates have been had, and they've been had in the right places. The right places are the school boards, and they've been had, and in Greene County, the debate was had, and they decided to lift the mask mandate. That's democracy.
That is democracy. Orange County did the same thing. Augusta County did the same thing. But to your point, democracy is Virginians voting a man into the mansion that ran on a foundation of removing masks from school. That is also democracy.
That is democracy, but he can't get outside his lane. He's given limited authority as governor, and he has to stick to his limited authority. We all have limited authority. School boards have limited authority. Commonwealth's attorneys have limited authority. All I'm saying is he needs to stay in his lane.
Yeah, right. In his lane, he would have to, and we'll get to these comments coming in. In his lane, this is a topic that we need to discuss. Is his lane funding leverage in schools that do not listen to him and removing of that funding based on student body count?
I don't know. I just mentioned that's a possibility. I don't know if it's proper, if it's legal, and I don't know if it were legal that it would be something he would want to do.
Yeah, because that would polarize quite a few Virginians.
It would.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't do it. I don't know if he has the authority to do it, but if he did have the authority to do it, I hope he didn't do it, because I think it would be very harmful to the Commonwealth and very divisive and polarizing.
And I agree 100% with that. And we all know that Youngkin has political aspirations. He's already being rumored as a presidential candidate, maybe even a VP candidate, Youngkin. So from a political science and strategy standpoint, maybe that doesn't make great sense. More questions coming in. This is from Kelly Jackson. She has a daughter in public schools and one in private schools. And I appreciate your question, KJ. Can you please ask Mr. Hindley if private schools in Albemarle have to follow the government mandate?
Yeah, I wish I could give an answer to that. I just don't know.
I think it depends on the private school. As we've learned on the program, KJ, the Catholic schools in Charlottesville, for instance, Charlottesville Catholic, have to respond to the diocese in Richmond and their decision making. And the diocese in Richmond right now is saying it's parental autonomy. And guess what's being leveraged there by the diocese in Richmond? Money. So that's why we're seeing Charlottesville Catholic going pro-choice. Dr. Karen Fry-Wolf of Pediatric and Associates has this comment. In my opinion and experience, the increase in pediatric and adolescent mental health diagnoses. Thank you, Judah Wickower, keeping us on point, he always does, was directly related to virtual school, not masks. Masks allow children to stay in school, therefore reducing the risk of mental illness. Respect that opinion, Karen. You know I respect that opinion, Dr. Karen Fry-Wolf, and I appreciate your participation of late. All right, how about this? Can you walk us through the mechanics or the playbook of how Fairfax County School Board, Prince William County School Board, Alexandria School Board, Arlington, Richmond, Falls Church, and Hampton School Boards are suing the governor?
Well, no, I can't. I haven't seen the suits, but I would guess, and this is a guess, okay? This is not an authoritative opinion. I would guess that they're saying the same thing that I'm saying. Governor Youngkin got out of his lane. And who's suing Governor Youngkin? School boards.
School boards.
Right. So doesn't that tell us something? School boards, under the Constitution, are the ones vested with authority to make these decisions. And they must be suing, and again, I'm guessing this is not, I have not seen the lawsuits. They must be suing the governor for the reason that the governor has encroached upon their authority.
Overstepped what he can legally do.
Overstepped the bounds, yes.
Overstepped the bounds. Vanessa follows up. So this is an engaging topic here with a lot of participation, as we anticipated, Jim. So who and under what circumstances would Governor Northam's mandate be rescinded? What are the circumstances, and by who or what entity can rescind Northam's mandate if Youngkin, in your opinion, and we respect your opinion, is overstepping his boundaries? I guess school boards.
I don't know about who can rescind that. I think it's already gone out of effect. I don't think the public health emergency orders of Governor Northam are currently in effect. So I don't think they play a part in this discussion now.
Private businesses and mask mandates. Anything you can offer from a perspective here? Multiple viewers are asking private businesses mandating masks to enter their business. Please ask Mr. Hindley's take on that and whether they are legal or not. I mean, I think I know the answer to that, but you're the expert.
Well, I'm not going to offer an opinion on whether they're legal or not. I'm not here to give legal opinions. We're talking about policy. But I think fundamentally we have a free enterprise system. And in a free enterprise system, if you're a business owner and you want to set conditions on people coming into your business, I think you have the right to do that, as long as they're not racial discrimination or other things that are not permitted. And I mean, you know, we've all been to the beach probably. You know, you're on the beach and you want to go into
A restaurant.
a restaurant,
Yeah.
and the sign on the door says shoes and shirts required. So that business has chosen to say shoes and shirts required. If you want to patronize the business, you better put a shirt on and wear shoes. And the same thing is true of masks. If you want to go into business and the business owner says, you know, come in here with a mask because the business owner cares about other customers, cares about himself or herself, cares about the employees of the business, then seems to me they ought to be allowed to do that.
That's a good point. This is from Kelsey. Mr. Hindley, can parents recommend to your office criminal charges if an outbreak happens at a school where mask mandates have been rescinded and kids are now in hallways and there's a COVID outbreak that leads to severe sickness?
Well, let me say again what I said in response to the last question. I'm not here to give legal opinions, and I'm not going to do it. But let me go back to the business, because I want to make an additional point. You know, you can choose whether you go into a business or not.
Yeah.
And if you don't like the business policies, and other people don't like the policies, the masking policies that a business may impose, you can get together with your friends and say, don't go there anymore.
Exactly. The harshest voting when it comes to the private business is the disposable income of the marketplace.
Exactly.
And if the marketplace doesn't patronize the business will fail.
Right. But in contrast, the thing we're talking about here today, the schools, you don't have a choice whether your kid goes to school or not. Your kid has to go to school.
You do have a choice. You do have a choice. A parent can choose homeschooling, charter schooling, private schooling, or they can choose to move districts. Like we're seeing parents moving districts based on pro-choice or pro-mask. So there is a choice.
I disagree. There's a choice for some people. Some people can afford to move. Some people can afford to go to private school. Some people can afford to stay home and do homeschooling.
So you're
but
saying
not everybody
it's equity
can.
and resources.
Yes. And so
Fair.
some people are going to have to send their kids to school. And when they send their kids to school because they don't have any other choice, not the kind of choice that you have to patronize a business or not, and Governor Youngkin has canceled the policy of protecting your child and making your child safe by requiring masks, what are you to do?
See,
Because Governor Youngkin has canceled it. If what you had protection before he came along because you happen to live in one of those school districts where the school board said your schools will protect children by requiring masks. So you're in that school, and then Governor Youngkin comes along, gets outside his lane, cancels the school board decision that was fully and fairly made by a democratically elected body, and says, you can't have that protection anymore, I'm canceling it, and you don't have a choice except you have to go to this dangerous school, and you have to, and you can't move, and you can't stay home and homeschool. What is that parent supposed to do?
I respect that. I respect that. I do want to just clarify, and I respect you very much, Jim. You know I do. I do want to clarify that Youngkin is not anti-mask. He is pro-choice. He's not saying parents don't put your kids in masks and send them to schools. For example, and I've said this many times on our show, I am pro-choice when it comes to the parents. But with our choice, our autonomy as parents, we will send our son to school in a mask. In a large part because, I've said this many times on the program, my wife is very, very, very cautious and concerned when it comes to our son. And as you know, how long have you been married?
Well, quite a long while.
Right, and one of the keys to marriage is what? Compromise, right?
Yeah.
So I understand that if it's important to her and she's incredibly passionate about it, then we go with it. I go with it. I'm also a man of stats and science, and I've indicated on the show before that our son is almost 4, and I understand that someone in that age demographic, the risk is not nearly as severe as someone in the 180-degree different age bracket, older demographic with health issues. Now, I'm also aware that our little guy is interacting with Mimi and Pee-Pee right now at home, and they are in that demographic. So it's just this moving and evolving situation that is frustrating for so many.
Well, let me follow up.
Please.
This is not about the school children alone, all right? Who's in schools? Children, teachers, principals, administrative staff, food service workers. This is not about just children. This is about a safe work environment for everybody. And all those people,
But they can wear masks.
it doesn't matter.
They could double mask.
They can double mask, and they still don't have the protection that universal masking affords. They've been told by Governor Youngkin that they had a safe workplace if their school board had universal masking, and now they don't. And those are people who have conditions. They're older. Children have conditions. Just because you're a child and maybe you're not as much affected by the disease as adults doesn't mean that there aren't kids who are more affected because they have conditions. One of my children had asthma. I'm sure a lot of parents have children who have asthma. They're going to be more affected than other children. So it's not about choice. I disagree entirely with this construct that this is about pro-choice, and it's not. It's about a decision that's made by the governor to make schools unsafe because he's given the authority to make that decision to parents instead of allowing school boards to make that decision, which is where the authority properly belongs. Once one parent decides under Governor Youngkin's order that that parent is sending a child to school without a mask, you have lost the benefits of universal masking. You have lost the benefits of source control. And all of the people, the kids in the school who are immunocompromised, the adults who are 50, 60, 70 years old who are working in the kitchen or working in the administrator's office, the teachers, all those people are at higher risk because Governor Youngkin canceled the school board's decision.
I'll throw this out there, and Jim Hindley's doing an excellent job here. What we're trying to do with the program this week is offer both sides of the spectrum, as you can see, to be as fair as possible. This is from Robert McCartney, a retired Washington Post columnist and editor. He tweeted this yesterday. After days of media hype over mask-free Monday in Loudoun County schools, the system spokesman said only about 100 kids showed up without masks out of more than 80,000 students in all. The issue, if I'm reading the temperature or the pulse of the community correctly, and perhaps I'm not, but, okay. The issue is about the choice and not the mask itself. And I emphasized this yesterday's show, the show before that. Parents, we on both sides of the fence, and we're both fathers. Parents on both sides of the fence, the pro-mask and then the pro-choice folks, we all have one thing in common, and that's what's best for our kid, what we feel is best for our kid, right? I think this stat from Loudoun County Schools on Monday, only 100 kids out of 80,000 students in all showed up without masks, showed that parents understand for the most part the magnitude of Omicron and how quickly it spread. But they want the choice to make the decision as opposed to have it mandated and forced upon themselves. That, I think, is the issue here.
Well, if you want to call that the issue, I'm sorry. You don't get the choice. You don't get the choice to take a gun to school because we made a decision in our community that that's wrong. You don't get the choice to decide whether you should have masks or not in the schools. We have a system, it's called democracy. That choice is made by school boards, and you have every right to go to the school board and articulate your position.
And I agree with that, and you've made that point, and my counter to that has been the democratic system we're in has elected this person by a 2.2% margin, and he ran on a campaign saying he was going to do this. So, and to your point, democracy has spoken with the governor. I mean, he said he was going to do this. When the election happened throughout 2021, sure, Omicron was not at this severity. It wasn't. So maybe when we were voting this man in office in early November, the concern of this crazy spread wasn't as top of mind because Omicron wasn't as rapid. More comments coming in, and people very much enjoying the show, and thank you so much for being here. This is from Katie Pearl. Katie Pearl, I appreciate you speaking up, Katie Pearl. This comment, and I believe she is now in Albemarle County, right, Katie? This comment for you, Jim, let me get to it here. What gives, and I'll read it verbatim from her. I guess I'm confused. Why does Mr. Hindley feel like Governor Northam had the authority to make these decisions, but Governor Youngkin does not? That's her first question. And then she follows up with this. All the staff can vaccinate and mask if they so desire in schools. If that is enough for them, or if that is not enough for Mr. Hindley, when will Mr. Hindley be okay with allowing our children to not mask in perpetuity? So two-part question. When do you feel comfortable with not allowing our children to not mask in perpetuity? And the first question, the one we should address first, I'm confused, Katie says, why does Mr. Hindley feel like Governor Northam had the authority to make these decisions, but Governor Youngkin does not?
All right, let me answer the second one first. I'm not the person to say how long people should have masks on. You know, I've given facts. I believe that mandates are effective, but it's not in my lane either. I don't get to make the call. I don't know how long people should wear masks.
How about as a parent? How about as someone that is an evangelist of Albemarle, that wants the safety of Albemarle? I mean, your campaign was rooted in improving, for lack of better phrase, the essence of your campaign was rooted in improving the quality of life in Albemarle. And how your office has improved the quality of life of Albemarle is through criminal justice reform.
Yeah.
And you undoubtedly have done that. You have given second chances to people where maybe your predecessors would have, lack of better phrase, tossed them in jail and thrown away the key. And you, with an empathetic mindset that follows the law, but one that's based in empathy, have improved quality of life through criminal justice reform. How about as someone who's an evangelist of Albemarle, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the question was, as a parent, what do I want? And I'll tell you what I want. If I were a parent who had a child in school, I'm a parent, but I don't have a child in school right now. if I were a parent having a child in school, what I would want is I would want for my school board to make sound decisions about public health issues. I would want them to make those decisions based on facts and evidence and scientific opinion. And I would want them to hear all points of view before they make those decisions. And then I'm satisfied if their decision is, as of this date, masks are no longer required, then I'm satisfied as a citizen of Albemarle, and I'm satisfied as a parent, hypothetically, of a child in Albemarle schools. That's what I want.
Okay, and that's absolutely fair.
Now, if I can go back to the first question, because
yes, sir.
I went to number 2 first.
And let me re-ask it for the listeners and viewers.
All right.
Why does Katie says, I'm confused. Why does Mr. Hindley feel that Governor Northam had the authority to make these decisions, but Governor Youngkin does not?
Because Governor Northam was operating within the law. And there is a law that applies during public health emergencies. And a declaration of public health emergency has to be entered in the record, and it has certain things have to be done, certain findings have to be made by the State Commissioner of Health, and so on. And I don't know all of the specifics. I wasn't prepared for that question in detail, but I'm giving you the overview, which is accurate. Governor Northam was acting pursuant to statutory authority. He was in his lane. Governor Youngkin is not acting pursuant to any of the statutes that gave Governor Northam the authority to do what he did. Governor Youngkin is out of his lane.
Fair. So, by your argument, which you know a lot more about this than I do, by your argument, Governor Youngkin and his campaign and his team, and if they're watching or listening, or someone should send this to him, how he could potentially get back in his lane is if he utilizes data associated with mental health impact, suicide increases amongst teens, high schoolers, middle schoolers, and elementary students associated with masking in schools. And there's a lot of data out there about what masking has done from an anxiety standpoint, and certainly there's tremendous data out there about increased suicide rates during COVID associated with increased anxiety levels.
If he wants to use the authority that Governor Northam used, I'm not here to say that he can't do it. But I'm here to say let him do that instead of what he's doing now, which is canceling out the lawful authority, which is school boards.
That's absolutely fair. More coming in. And guys, if you want to, so we'll spend, can we go to 1:42 with you? Can we go 14 more minutes?
I'm here for as long as you like.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. We do have a 145 J-Dubs. If you see her come early, we can just hang in the bench over there outside the door, sir. Thank you so much. This is such a topic that I don't, it's frustrating because I don't think anyone anticipated this topic gaining so much momentum, but I understand why so many people are frustrated with the topic. Have people reached out in the community to you about this? From an official standpoint?
No, not this current situation. Now, when Governor Northam had restrictions in place pursuant to his statutory authority during a public health emergency, there were legal issues that came to my attention. But in the current situation, no, people have not been reaching out to me.
Would that be even in your office's purview? Do you try to stay away from because this is I'm not an expert. This seems like this is like very legal gray area.
Well, it is a legal gray area, I suppose, but not a criminal law legal gray area. I think the legal gray area is the area that's been raised in these lawsuits. We're going to have some answers, but you told me 7 schools, I don't remember the names of all of them, but 7 school systems have sued the governor. All right, so that's where we need to go to resolve this dispute. We need to go to the courts. The school systems have said you're outside your lane. Presumably Governor Youngkin is saying, no, I'm not outside my lane. I made a promise, I'm going to keep it, whatever he says. And again, I haven't seen the papers that have been filed in those lawsuits, but that's where the legal issues are right now. They're not in the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office.
This is from a mom of an Orange County school system pair of twins. Jerry, I watched the show as much as possible, and the show's been really good of late. You made the comment a couple days ago that masks are going to be the 2022 version of segregation in schools. I can relay from our son's middle school that the cafeteria is undoubtedly divided with one side of students wearing masks and the other side of students not wearing masks. And it's clear the parents have instructed the kids to stay away from each other. I am seeing the comment of segregation in Orange County school systems. Your thoughts on that? Mask and how it could lead to segregation?
I think that's a little extreme. What's happening is exactly what you believe in and Governor Youngkin believes in, parental autonomy. Parents have said if you're wearing masks and you shouldn't, it's dangerous to be exposed to people who are not because there's no source control. They're telling their children to stay away. That's not segregation. That's responding to a health emergency in the way that parent and ultimately that child sees fit. That's parental autonomy, not segregation.
Yeah, I'll give you that. That's a fair point. Parental autonomy in this regard could eventually lead to segregation if it persists. If it persists, and certainly with developing minds that are emotional and figuring things out on the fly, and don't have the benefit of maturation and experience to make good decisions. This comment, is it not ironic that statutes appear to make it easier to impose restrictions under a state of emergency than to restore freedoms and choices to the public?
No, it's not ironic. The statutes have a purpose to respond to a public health emergency. There's nothing ironic about the absence of statutes giving the governor authority to restore freedoms. As I've said many times, we do have a statute that says that these freedoms can be restored. It's the statute and the Constitution that establishes school boards. It's elected members of school boards. If you want your freedoms restored to wear masks or not to wear masks in schools, go to your school board and get them to change their views, just like they did in Greene County, 3-2. That's where you go.
This is another question from a viewer. This is a legal question for Mr. Hindley. Do the school boards have the legal standing to fight this after August when SB 1303 expires?
Again, as I've said before, I haven't looked at those suits. I don't know the details of those suits, so I'm not going to offer a legal opinion.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. J-Dubs, I believe, has a question or two that he wants to get to, and we're happy to weave that into the mix. Youngkin and kids in private schools. We should identify that. And I've tried, when covering this from both sides of the mix, to put that into the news cycle of this show. Anything you want to address with Youngkin and how he's choosing to school his kids?
Well, he's a parent like I described before when we were talking about choices, okay? Some parents have choices, some don't. And I described the situation of a parent whose child has to go to a public school and who wants that child to be safe and doesn't have the choice, if that parent feels the school environment is unsafe, to send a child to private school, to stay home and do homeschooling. to do other alternatives, to sell a house and buy a house somewhere else in today's real estate market.
Right.
Come on.
Brutal market.
All right.
Brutal market.
So there are a lot of parents out there who don't have choices. Governor Youngkin has choices. And so he's one of the parents that gets to choose, and that's what his choice is.
Do you find it ironic?
I'm not going to comment.
Okay, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. J-Dubs, you want to jump in the mix with anything? There's no pressure. We don't have to if you don't want to, sir.
I don't know that I really have any questions specifically for Jim Hindley. I think more just general questions for the audience that can wait until later.
Okay, that's absolutely fair. Closing thoughts.
All right. You know, I work in the court system. I'm happy to work in the court system. And I'm especially happy that the court system provides a safe workplace. The building where I work that has courts in it, clerk's offices, my office, the courts have said universal masking is required. So I have a safe workplace. And that's one of the reasons I'm passionate about this school issue, because Governor Youngkin says that children shouldn't be given a safe workplace, a safe place to learn. But I have the benefit of that, and I hate to see parts of our community not have that protection, not have a safe environment in which to go to school and work in school. But let me tell you, it kind of boils down to this for me. There isn't anybody in our building that says, oh, my personal freedoms have been taken away from me. My liberty is being infringed on. What we say, and I was raised in a faith tradition that says, love your neighbor. And I think I speak for, if not everyone, most of the people that work in the court system where masks are required, that we don't see this as an infringement on our individual liberty. We see this as a way of loving our neighbors. Because if we don't wear a mask, because our choice is that we don't wear a mask, our individual liberty gives us the right not to wear a mask, then we endanger everybody else who we come into contact with if we have COVID virus in our system and we are asymptomatic. So we do it to protect ourselves because there's some value in wearing a mask to protect yourself, but really we do it to protect others. And we do it full of heartfelt concern for our neighbors, for the people in our community. And that's where I'd like to leave this. Love your neighbor. Wear that mask.
Well said. That was a great closing statement there. This is an interesting question that just came in from Jackson Ward in Richmond, Virginia. We love our viewers in Richmond and our listeners. And first they say, great show. We've watched from start to finish in our office. Please ask Mr. Hindley if he's ever seen in his vast experience a topic as divisive as this, and if so, which ones? I mean, segregation's undoubtedly one.
Yeah, I mean, segregation. Let's talk about civil rights generally, voting rights. I guess I'm old enough that I've been around when schools were segregated. We had, there's been a lot. There's been a lot of dividing issues in our history. When you look back on some of those things, the way we make progress is we follow the law. I mean, the Gregory Swanson case, and I know you're familiar with it, and we've talked about it before, but we have right here in Charlottesville, the first African American in the South who broke the color barrier in 1950 and was admitted to the University of Virginia as a student. And how was that accomplished? That was accomplished by following the law, by filing a lawsuit, by having the lawsuit heard, by talking about what the Constitution requires, and by a panel of judges ordering University of Virginia to admit an African American. And so I go back, I mean, I have fundamental respect for the rule of law and all that it can accomplish in terms of addressing divisions. We've gotten through a lot in our country, in our history. We're in a very difficult time now in terms of this issue and the divisions among our citizens. But stick to the rules, stick to the rule of law, and we'll get through this. And stay in your lane.
Closing with a home run there. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Seriously. Thank you. Very, very, very much enjoyed it. Jim Hindley is the Commonwealth's Attorney of Albemarle County. And as you can see, just an all-around stand-up guy. Thank you so much for joining us. Tomorrow's program, we continue the discussion with Dr. Jeff Vergalis of UVA Health System and Dr. Eliza Thomason. Let me get your last name here. Dr. Eliza Thomason Holland. Thank you, Judah Woodcower. 2 of the 14 doctors that authored the Urgency of Normal COVID Toolkit that is, as predicted yesterday, going viral. And we're hearing soon to be a New York Times cover story. So 2 of the 14 doctors that authored this toolkit live in studio tomorrow to talk about a toolkit that is certainly gaining a lot of viewership and eyeballs. Judah Woodcower, Jim Hindley, Jerry Miller, the I Love Seville Show. We will see you tomorrow. You guys take care. Bye-bye.